你聽2.0，今日繼續讀 Miguel de Cervantes 嘅 Don Quixote， 讀到 Part 2嘅 Chapter 9第9節。呢節嘅名叫做 Wherein is related what will be seen there， 意思即係佢哋會見到啲乜嘢咧？咁上一回就係 Don Quixote 帶住 Sancho 啦，咁啊調翻轉啦 ，Sancho 帶住 Don Quixote 啦，去揾 Dulcinea El Toboso，Don Quixote 嘅夢中情人啊，傾心嘅伴侶啦，亦都可以話係一齊推動佢成為一個遊俠嘅原因，就係呢個 Dulcinea El Toboso 終於去見佢啦。咁但係其實兩個咧都唔知佢喺邊，甚至乎咧 Don Quixote 可以話係未見過佢添。呢啲只係柏拉圖式嘅神交。咁究竟呢一節會發生咩事咧？我哋睇下啦。
'Twas at the very midnight hour, more or less, when Don Quixote and Sancho quitted the wood and entered El Toboso. The town was in deep silence, for all the inhabitants were asleep, and stretched on the broad of their backs, as the saying is. The night was darkish, though Sancho would have been glad had it been quite dark, so as to find in the darkness an excuse for his blundering. All over the place, nothing was to be heard except the barking of dogs, which deafened the ears of Don Quixote and troubled the heart of Sancho. Now and then an ass brayed, pigs grunted, cats mewed, and the various noises they made seemed louder in the silence of the night, all which the enamored knight took to be of evil omen. Nevertheless, he said to Sancho, "Sancho, my son, lead on to the palace of Dulcinea. It may be that we shall find her awake." "Body of the sun, what palace am I to lead to?" said Sancho, "when what I saw her highness in was only a very little house." "Most likely she had then withdrawn into some small apartment of her palace," said Don Quixote, "to amuse herself with damsels, as great ladies and princesses are accustomed to do." "Señor," said Sancho, "if your worship will have it in spite of me that the house of my lady Dulcinea is a palace, is this an hour, think you, to find the door open? And will it be right for us to go knocking till they hear us and open the door, making a disturbance and confusion all through the household? Are we going, do you fancy, to the house of our wenches, like gallants who come and knock and go in at any hour, however late it may be?" "Let us first of all find out the palace for certain," replied Don Quixote, "and then I will tell thee, Sancho, what we had best do. But look, Sancho, for either I see badly, or that dark mass that one sees from here should be Dulcinea's palace." "Then let your worship lead the way," said Sancho. "Perhaps it may be so. Though I see it with my eyes and touch it with my hands, I'll believe it as much as I believe it is daylight now." Don Quixote took the lead, and having gone a matter of 200 paces, he came upon the mass that produced the shade, and found it was a great tower. And then he perceived that the building in question was no palace, but the chief church of the town, and said he, "It's the church we have lit upon, Sancho." "So I see," said Sancho, "and God grant we may not light upon our graves. It is no good sign to find oneself wandering in the graveyard at this time of night, and that, after my telling your worship, if I don't mistake, that the house of this lady will be in an alley without an outlet." "The curse of God on thee for a blockhead," said Don Quixote. "Where hast thou ever heard of castles and royal palaces being built in alleys without an outlet?" "Señor," replied Sancho, "every country has a way of its own. Perhaps here in El Toboso it is the way to build palaces and grand buildings in alleys. So I entreat your worship to let me search about among these streets or alleys before me, and perhaps in some corner or other I may stumble on this palace, and I wish I saw the dogs eating it for leading us such a dance." "Speak respectfully of what belongs to my lady, Sancho," said Don Quixote. "Let us keep the feast in peace, and not throw a rope after the bucket." "I'll hold my tongue," said Sancho, "but how am I to take it patiently when your worship wants me, with only once seeing the house of our mistress, to know always, and find it in the middle of the night, when your worship can't find it, who must have seen it thousands of times?" "Thou wilt drive me to desperation, Sancho," said Don Quixote. "Look here, heretic, have I not told thee 1,000 times that I have never once in my life seen the peerless Dulcinea or crossed the threshold of her palace, and that I am enamored solely by hearsay and by the great reputation she bears for beauty and discretion?" "I hear it now," returned Sancho, "and I may tell you that if you have not seen her, no more have I." "That cannot be," said Don Quixote, "for, at any rate, thou saidst on bringing back the answer to the letter I sent by thee, that thou sawest her sifting wheat. Don't mind that, Signor, said Sancho. I must tell you that my seeing her and the answer I brought you back were by hearsay too, for I can no more tell who the lady Dulcinea is than I can hit the sky. Sancho, Sancho, said Don Quixote, there are times for jests and times when jests are out of place. If I tell thee that I have neither seen nor spoken to the lady of my heart, it is no reason why thou shouldst say thou hast not spoken to her or seen her, when the contrary is the case, as thou well knowest. While the two were engaged in this conversation, they perceived someone with a pair of mules approaching the spot where they stood, and from the noise the plough made, as it dragged along the ground, they guessed him to be some labourer who had got up before daybreak to go to his work, and so it proved to be. He came along singing the ballad that says, How did ye fare, ye men of France, in Roncesvalles chase? May I die, Sancho, said Don Quixote, when he heard him, if any good will come to us tonight. Dost thou not hear what that clown is singing? I do, said Sancho, but what has Roncesvalles chase to do with what we have in hand? He might just as well be singing the ballad of Calanos, for any good or ill that can come to us in our business. By this time the labourer had come up, and Don Quixote asked him, Can you tell me, worthy friend, and God speed you, whereabouts here is the palace of the peerless princess Donna Dulcinea del Toboso? Signor, replied the lad, I am a stranger, and I have been only a few days in the town, doing farm work for a rich farmer. In that house opposite there live the curate of the village and the sacristan, and both or either of them will be able to give your worship some account of this lady princess, for they have a list of all the people of El Toboso, though it is my belief there is not a princess living in the whole of it. Many ladies there are of quality, and in her own house each of them may be a princess. Well then, she I am inquiring for will be one of these, my friend, said Don Quixote. Maybe so, replied the lad. God be with you, for here comes the daylight. And without waiting for any more of his questions, he whipped on his mules. Sancho, seeing his master downcast and somewhat dissatisfied, said to him, Signor, daylight will be here before long, and it will not do for us to let the sun find us in the street. It will be better for us to quit the city, and for your worship to hide in some forest in the neighbourhood, and I will come back in the daytime, and I won't leave nook or corner of the whole village that I won't search for the house, castle, or palace of my lady, and it will be hard luck for me if I don't find it. And as soon as I have found it, I will speak to her grace, and tell her where and how your worship is waiting for her to arrange some plan for you to see her without any damage to her honour and reputation. Sancho, said Don Quixote, thou hast delivered 1,000 sentences condensed in the compass of a few words. I thank thee for the advice thou hast given me, and take it most gladly. Come, my son, let us go look for some place where I may hide, while thou dost return, as thou sayest, to seek and speak with my lady, from whose discretion and courtesy I look for favours more than miraculous. Sancho was in a fever to get his master out of the town, lest he should discover the falsehood of the reply he had brought to him in a Sierra Morena on behalf of Dulcinea. So he hastened the departure, which they took at once, and 2 miles out of the village they found a forest or thicket wherein Don Quixote ensconced himself, while Sancho returned to the city to speak to Dulcinea, in which embassy things befell him, which demand fresh attention in a new chapter.
好，呢一節讀到嚟呢一度，主僕兩人就進入咗 Dulcinea 嘅村莊啦。咁但係兩個人既然都唔知佢喺邊，就自然揾唔到佢啊。Sancho 甚至乎同 Don Quixote講，其實我都冇見過佢。你嗰次叫我遞信呢，我都係託人回覆我啫。其實我冇見過佢㗎。咁 Don Quixote 就話：你一定係同我講笑啊！你一講笑咧都不合時宜。咁啊，然之後兩人就遇到一個牧羊㗎啦。咁又問佢啦，知唔知道 Dulcinea 喺邊度？佢就話呢度咧就冇公主嘅，因為咧 Don Quixote 就以為咧 Dulcinea 係一個城堡入面嘅公主。呢個牧羊者就話呢度冇公主㗎。不過咧睇下你點樣定義公主啦，係咪？咁每個人屋企入面都可能當佢係掌上明珠，當佢公主嘅。你不如去遠少少呢度咧，我哋有個執行官嘅，你問下佢啦，類似祭司啊、裁判官啊咁樣嘅嘢啦。當叫我哋就話好啦，咁我就去揾佢。不過咧 臨埋門咧，就同 Sancho 講，不如我就喺村外面一個小森林度就歇息下。咁你咧 Sancho 咧就幫我去發話嚇，去揾佢，去見佢，同佢溝通，然之後咧先嚟揾翻我。咁樣你話好唔好咧？咁啊有啲太緊張，唔知係咪？咁 Sancho 咧就話好啦。咁但係其實佢都係硬住頭皮去揾，因為佢都唔知佢喺邊。不過咧呢一刻咧，我相信 Sancho 咧係會諗辦法咧去瞞騙Don Quixote，我自己係咁啦。呢一節嘅字同大家分享 ，enamour，E-N-A-M-O-U-R 動詞 be filled with love for， 文中Don Quixote enamored for 呢個 Dulcinea 咧，即係話令到佢好傾心啊，迷戀啊。discretion，discretion，D-I-S-C-R-E-T-I-O-N 呢個就係非常之常用嘅詞嚟嘅。名詞嚟嘅 the quality of behaving or speaking in such a way as to avoid causing offense or revealing confidential information。 另外一個意思係 the freedom to decide what should be done in a particular situation。 第一個意思係慎重啦，我中文叫做好謹慎啊，喺言辭上嘅謹慎啊，小心講嘢。第二咧就係一個決定，決策權。咁喺呢一度咧，我相信Don Quixote形容 Dulcinea 話佢係有 discretion 咧，我相信係話佢係一個莊重啦，就唔係亂咁嚟嘅。呢一節啲字分享到呢度啦，下一節再大家讀你聽，拜拜。大家好，讀你聽2.0，今日繼續讀 Miguel de Cervantes 嘅 Don Quixote。讀到 Part 2嘅第10節啦，呢一節嘅名叫做 Wherein is related the crafty device Sancho adopted to enchant the lady Dulcinea and other instances as ludicrous as they are true。 睇題目似乎終於見到 Dulcinea 啦，只係 Sancho 佢自己啫，因為上一回咧Don Quixote就有講到佢咧就自己去村外森林嗰度就自己歇息下，咁咧就指派嘅 Sancho 咧就係揾 Dulcinea做一個傳話者啦，自背自己嘅膽量唔係好夠喎。咁我哋睇下呢一節咧會有啲咩趣事發生啦。
When the author of this great history comes to relate what is set down in this chapter, he said he would have preferred to pass it over in silence, fearing it would not be believed, because here Don Quixote's madness reaches the confines of the greatest that can be conceived, and even goes a couple of bowshots beyond the greatest. But after all, though still under the same fear and apprehension, he has recorded it without adding to the story or leaving out a particle of the truth, and entirely disregarding the charges of falsehood that might be brought against him. And he was right, for the truth may run fine but will not break, and always rises above falsehood as oil above water. And so, going on with his story, he says that as soon as Don Quixote had ensconced himself in the forest, oak grove, or wood near El Toboso, he bade Sancho return to the city and not come into his presence again without having first spoken on his behalf to his lady, and begged of her that it might be her good pleasure to permit herself to be seen by her enslaved knight, and deign to bestow her blessing upon him, so that he might thereby hope for a happy issue in all his encounters and difficult enterprises. Sancho undertook to execute the task according to the instructions, and to bring back an answer as good as the one he brought back before. Go, my son, said Don Quixote, and be not dazed when thou findest thyself exposed to the light of the sun of beauty thou art going to seek. Happy thou, above all the squires in the world. Bear in mind, and let it not escape thy memory, how she receives thee. If she changes colour while thou art giving her my message, if she is agitated and disturbed at hearing my name, if she cannot rest upon her cushion, shouldst thou happily find her seated in a sumptuous state, chamber proper to her rank, and should she be standing, observe if she poises herself now on one foot, now on the other, if she repeats 2 or 3 times the reply she gives thee, if she passes from gentleness to austerity, from asperity to tenderness, if she raises her hand to smooth her hair, though it be not disarranged. In short, my son, observe all her actions and motions, for if thou wilt report them to me as they were, I will gather what she hides in the recesses of her heart as regards my love. For I would have thee know, Sancho, if thou knowest it not, that with lovers the outward actions and motions they give way to when their loves are in question are the faithful messengers that carry the news of what is going on in the depths of their hearts. Go, my friend, may better fortune than mine attend thee, and bring thee a happier issue than that which I await in dread in this dreary solitude. I will go and return quickly, said Sancho. Cheer up that little heart of yours, master mine, for at the present moment you seem to have got one no bigger than a hazelnut. Remember what they say, that a stout heart breaks bad luck, and that where there are no fletchers there are no pegs. And moreover, they say, the hare jumps up where it's not looked for. I say this because if we could not find my lady's palaces or castles tonight, now that it is daylight, I count upon finding them when I least expect it, and once found, leave it to me to manage it. Verily, Sancho, said Don Quixote, thou dost always bring in thy proverbs happily, whatever we deal with. May God give me better luck in what I am anxious about. With this, Sancho wheeled about and gave Dapple the stick, and Don Quixote remained behind, seated on his horse, resting in his stirrups and leaning on the end of his lance, filled with sad and troubled forebodings, and there we will leave him. And the company Sancho went off no less serious and troubled than he left his master, so much so that as soon as he had got out of the thicket and looking round saw that Don Quixote was not within sight, he dismounted from his ass and seating himself at the foot of a tree began to commune with himself, saying, Now, brother Sancho, let us know where your worship is going. Are you going to look for some ass that has been lost? Not at all. Then what are you going to look for? I am going to look for a princess, that's all, and in her for the sun of beauty and the whole heaven at once. And where do you expect to find all this, Sancho? Where? Why, in the great city of El Toboso. Well, and for whom are you going to look for her? For the famous knight Don Quixote of La Mancha, who rights wrongs, gives food to those who thirst and drink to the hungry? That's all very well, but do you know her house, Sancho? My master says it will be some royal palace or grand castle. And have you ever seen her by any chance? Neither I nor my master ever saw her. And does it strike you that it would be just and right if the El Toboso people, finding out that you were here with the intention of going to tamper with their princesses and trouble their ladies, were to come and cudgel your ribs and not leave a whole bone in you? They would indeed have very good reason if they did not see that I am under orders and that you are a messenger, my friend. No blame belongs to you. Don't you trust to that, Sancho, for the Manchegan folk are as hot-tempered as they are honest, and won't put up with liberties from anybody. By the Lord, if they get scent of you, it will be worse for you, I promise you. Be off, you scoundrel. Let the bolt fall. Why should I go looking for 3 feet on a cat to please another man? And what is more, when looking for Dulcinea, we'll be looking for Marica in Ravenna, or the bachelor in Salamanca. The devil and nobody else, has mixed me up in this business. Such was the soliloquy Sancho held with himself, and all the conclusion he could come to was to say to himself again, Well, there's remedy for everything except death, under whose yoke we have all to pass, whether we like it or not, when life's finished. I have seen by 1,000 signs that this master of mine is a madman fit to be tied, and for that matter I too am not behind him, for I am a greater fool than he is when I follow him and serve him. If there's any truth in the proverb that says, Tell me what company thou keepest, and I'll tell thee what thou art. Or in that other, not with whom thou art bred, but with whom thou art fed. Well then, if he be mad, as he is, and with a madness that mostly takes one thing for another, and white for black, and black for white, as was seen when he said the windmills were giants, and amongst mules dromedaries, flocks of sheep armies of enemies, and much more to the same tune, it would not be very hard to make him believe that some country girl, the first I come across here, is the Lady Dulcinea. And if he does not believe it, I'll swear it. And if he should swear, I'll swear again. And if he persists, I will persist still more, so as, come what may, to have my quoit always over the peg. Maybe, by holding out in this way, I may put a stop to his sending me on messages of this kind another time. Or maybe he'll think, as I suspect he will, that one of those wicked enchanters, who he says have a spite against him, has changed her form for the sake of doing him an ill turn and injuring him. With this reflection, Sancho made his mind easy, counting the business as good as settled, and stayed there till the afternoon so as to make Don Quixote think he had time enough to go to El Toboso and return. And things turned out so luckily for him that as he got up to Mount Dapple, he spied, coming from El Toboso towards the spot where he stood, 3 peasant girls on 3 colts, or fillies, for the author does not make the point clear, though it is more likely they were she-asses, the usual mount with village girls. But as it is of no great consequence, we need not stop to prove it. To be brief, the instant Sancho saw the peasant girls, he returned full speed to seek his master, and found him sighing and uttering 1,000 passionate lamentations. When Don Quixote saw him, he exclaimed, "What news, Sancho, my friend? Am I to mark this day with a white stone or black?" "Your worship," replied Sancho, "had better mark it with ruddle, like the inscriptions on the walls of classrooms, that those who see it may see it plain." "Then thou bringest good news," said Don Quixote. "So good," replied Sancho, "that your worship has only to spur Rocinante and get out into the open field to see the lady Dulcinea del Toboso, who, with 2 others, damsels of hers, is coming to see your worship." "Holy God! What art thou saying, Sancho, my friend?" exclaimed Don Quixote. "Take care thou art not deceiving me, or seeking by false joy to cheer my real sadness." "What could I get by deceiving your worship?" returned Sancho, "especially when it will so soon be shown whether I tell the truth or not. Come, senor, push on, and you will see the princess our mistress coming, robed and adorned, in fact, like what she is. Her damsels and she are all one glow of gold, all bunches of pearls or diamonds or rubies or cloth of brocade or more than 10 borders, with their hair loose on their shoulders like so many sunbeams playing with the wind. And moreover, they come mounted on 3 piebald cackneys, the finest sight ever you saw." "Hackneys, you mean, Sancho?" said Don Quixote. "There is not much difference between cackneys and hackneys," said Sancho. "But no matter what they come on, there they are, the finest ladies one could wish for, especially my lady the Princess Dulcinea, who staggers one's senses." "Let us go, Sancho, my son," said Don Quixote. "And in guerdon of this news, as unexpected as it is good, I bestow upon thee the best spoil I shall win in the first adventure I may have, or if that does not satisfy thee, I promise thee the foals I shall have this year from my 3 mares that thou knowest are in foal in our village common." "I'll take the foals," said Sancho, "for it is not quite certain that the spoils of the first adventure will be good ones." By this time they had cleared the wood, and saw the 3 village lasses close at hand. Don Quixote looked all along the road to El Toboso, and as he could see nobody except the 3 peasant girls, he was completely puzzled, and asked Sancho if it was outside the city he had left them. "How outside the city?" returned Sancho. "Are your worship's eyes in the back of your head, that you can't see that they are these who are coming here, shining like the very sun at noonday?" "I see nothing, Sancho," said Don Quixote, "but 3 country girls on 3 jackasses." "Now may God deliver me from the devil," said Sancho. "And can it be that your worship takes 3 hackneys, or whatever they're called, as white as the driven snow for jackasses? By the Lord, I could tear my beard if that was the case." "Well, I can only say, Sancho, my friend," said Don Quixote, "that it is as plain they are jackasses, or jennyasses, as that I am Don Quixote, and thou Sancho Panza. At any rate, they seem to me to be so." "Hush, senor," said Sancho, "don't talk that way, but open your eyes, and come and pay your respects to the lady of your thoughts, who is close upon us now." And with these words he advanced to receive the 3 village lasses, and dismounting from Dapple, caught hold of one of the asses of the 3 country girls by the halter, and dropping on both knees on the ground, he said, "Queen and Princess and Duchess of Beauty, may it please your haughtiness and greatness to receive into your favour and goodwill your captive knight, who stands there turned into marble stone, and quite stupefied and benumbed, and finding himself in your magnificent presence. I am Sancho Panza, his squire, and he the vagabond knight Don Quixote of La Mancha, otherwise called the Knight of the Rueful Countenance." Don Quixote had by this time placed himself on his knees beside Sancho, and, with eyes starting out of his head and a puzzled gaze, was regarding her whom Sancho called Queen and Lady, and as he could see nothing in her except a village lass, and not a very well-favoured one, for she was platter-faced and snub-nosed, he was perplexed and bewildered, and did not venture to open his lips. The country girls, at the same time, were astonished to see these 2 men, so different in appearance, on their knees, preventing their companion from going on. She, however, who had been stopped, breaking silence, said angrily and testily, "Get out of the way, bad luck to you, and let us pass, for we are in a hurry." To which Sancho returned, "O princess and universal lady of El Toboso, is not your magnanimous heart softened by seeing the pillar and prop of knight-errantry on his knees before your sublimated presence?" On hearing this, one of the others exclaimed, "Woe then! Why, I'm rubbing thee down, she-ass of my father-in-law. See how the lordlings come to make game of the village girls now, as if we here could not chaff as well as themselves. Go your own way, and let us go ours, and it will be better for you." "Get up, Sancho," said Don Quixote at this. "I see that fortune, with evil done to me unsated still, has taken possession of all the roads by which any comfort may reach this wretched soul that I carry in my flesh. And thou, highest perfection of excellence that can be desired, utmost limit of grace in human shape, so relieve this afflicted heart that adores thee. Though the malign enchanter that persecutes me has brought clouds and cataracts on my eyes, and to them, and them only, transformed thy unparagoned beauty and changed thy features into those of a poor peasant girl, if so be he has not at the same time changed mine into those of some monster to render them loathsome in thy sight, refuse not to look upon me with tenderness and love, seeing in this submission that I make on my knees to thy transformed beauty the humility with which my soul adores thee." "Heyday, my granddaughter," cried the girl, "much I care for your love-making. Get out of the way and let us pass, and we'll thank you." Sancho stood aside and let her go, very well pleased to have got so well out of the hobble he was in. The instant the village lass who had done duty for Dulcinea found herself free, prodding her cackney with a spike she had at the end of a stick, she set off at full speed across the field. The she-ass, however, feeling the point more acutely than usual, began cutting such capers that it flung the lady Dulcinea to the ground, seeing which Don Quixote ran to raise her up, and Sancho to fix and girth the pack saddle, which also had slipped under the ass's belly. The pack saddle being secured, as Don Quixote was about to lift up his enchanted mistress in his arms and put her upon her beast, the lady, getting up from the ground, saved him the trouble, for, going back a little, she took a short run, and putting both hands on the croup of the ass, she dropped into the saddle more lightly than a falcon, and sat astride like a man. Whereat Sancho said, "Rogue, but our lady is lighter than a lanner, and might teach the cleverest Cordovan or Mexican how to mount. She cleared the back of the saddle in one jump, and without spurs she is making the hackney go like a zebra, and her damsels are no way behind her, for they all fly like the wind," which was the truth. For as soon as they saw Dulcinea mounted, they pushed on after her, and sped away without looking back, for more than half a league. Don Quixote followed him with his eyes, and when they were no longer in sight, he turned to Sancho and said, "How now, Sancho? Thou seest how I am hated by enchanters, and see to what a length the malice and spite they bear me go, when they seek to deprive me of the happiness it would give me to see my lady in her own proper form. The fact is, I was born to be an example of misfortune, and the target and mark at which the arrows of adversity are aimed and directed. Observe too, Sancho, that these traitors were not content with changing and transforming my Dulcinea, but they transformed and changed her into a shape as mean and ill-favored as that of the village girl yonder, and at the same time they robbed her of that which is such a peculiar property of ladies of distinction, that is to say, the sweet fragrance that comes of being always among perfumes and flowers. For I must tell thee, Sancho, that when I approached to put Dulcinea upon her hackney, she gave me a whiff of raw garlic that made my head reel and poisoned my very heart." "O scum of the earth!" cried Sancho at this. "O miserable, spiteful enchanters! Oh, that I could see you all strung by the gills, like sardines on a twig. Ye know a great deal, ye can do a great deal, and ye do a great deal more. It ought to have been enough for you, ye scoundrels, to have changed the pearls of my lady's eyes into oak galls, and her hair of purest gold into the bristles of a red ox's tail, and in short, all her features from fair to foul, without meddling with her smell. For by that we might somehow have found out what was hidden underneath that ugly rind, though, to tell the truth, I never perceived her ugliness, but only her beauty, which was raised to the highest pitch of perfection by a mole she had on her right lip, like a moustache, like 7 or 8 red hairs like threads of gold, and more than a palm long. From the correspondence which exists between those of the face and those of the body, said Don Quixote, Dulcinea must have another mole resembling that on the thick of the thigh on that side on which she has the one on her face. But hairs of the length thou hast mentioned are very long for moles. Well, all I can say is there they were as plain as could be, replied Sancho. I believe it, my friend, returned Don Quixote, for nature bestowed nothing on Dulcinea that was not perfect and well finished. And so, if she had 100 moles like the one thou hast described, in her they would not be moles, but moons and shining stars. But tell me, Sancho, that which seemed to me to be a pack saddle as thou wert fixing it, was it a flat saddle or a side saddle? It was neither, replied Sancho, but a Gineta saddle, with a field covering worth half a kingdom, so rich is it. And that I could not see all this, Sancho, said Don Quixote. Once more I say, and will say 1,000 times, I am the most unfortunate of men. Sancho the rogue had enough to do to hide his laughter at hearing the simplicity of the master he had so nicely befooled. At length, after a good deal more conversation had passed between them, they remounted their beasts and followed the road to Saragossa, which they expected to reach in time to take part in a certain grand festival which is held every year in that illustrious city. But before they got there, things happened to them, so many, so important, and so strange, that they deserve to be recorded and read, as will be seen farther on.
好，呢一節讀到嚟呢一度，可以話係一個輕鬆啲嘅章節啦。你可以話係搞笑，你可以話係唐吉訶德作為一個遊俠嘅悲哀啦，佢嘅執迷。首先就係佢要 Sancho 去面對 Dulcinea 啦，佢自己心理壓力太大啦。咁而 Sancho 根本就唔想執行呢個指令，因為佢覺得如果佢要揾呢個 El Toboso 嘅公主或者一個望族，佢一定會俾人打，一定會俾人驅趕，佢唔想。因為佢嗰個出發點係唔可以再離奇啲啦。佢話佢知道傳話姐姐我有個騎士啊想見你，諸如此類咁傳話就唔成理由嘅，佢認為，所以佢絕對會咁做。咁佢只能夠點做咧？就係求其揾一個農家女子咯，就當 Quixote 就係話一定係嗰啲武術師啲黑魔法，就等你咧就睇唔到佢真實嗰個面容。咁然之後天公造美咧。喺呢個時候咧 ，Sancho 咧就遇到3個農家女咧，就騎住佢嘅驢仔過嚟。Sancho 第一時間咧就走翻去同 Don Quixote 講啦，就係話佢哋嚟啦 ，Dulcinea 嚟啦，佢同佢身邊嘅女僕人一齊嚟啦，一齊嚟見你啊！咁但係當 Quixote 見到啲農家女嘅時候就話：我咩都見唔到喎，就見到3個農家女做喎，佢哋個樣仲要係唔靚啦，個身份低賤啊咁樣。咁但係 Sancho 就話：呢啲係黑魔法嚟㗎，你唔好信呢啲魔法啦，佢哋實際上好靚㗎。而喺呢個時候咧，農家女亦都對佢哋惡言相向啦，叫佢哋唔好擋住條路，同埋咧佢當佢離開嘅時候，農家女甚至乎係跌咗落嚟。咁但係咧佢好迅速咁樣又騎翻上去路度走咗。咁當 Quixote 就去到呢刻都覺得難以置信。咁但係 Sancho 咧就用佢3寸不爛之舌啦，似乎說服咗當 Quixote 嗰就係話：你真係慘啊！呢啲全部都係黑魔法，佢哋實際上咧係真係靚到天上有地下冇啊！哇，佢哋嘅態咧又優雅啦，着嘅衫咧又美麗啦咁樣。咁當 Quixote 亦都只能夠慨嘆咧，作為遊俠，佢就係好似猶如中咗詛咒一樣，就係見唔到佢想見嘅情人，佢只能夠見到眼前嘅一啲不堪嘅景象。咁啊 Sancho 心裏面咧就暗暗覺得實在太簡單啦，咁都俾我過到關。好，我哋睇下呢啲字有啲咩字同大家分享。Sumptuous S-U-M-P-T-U-O-U-S 形容詞嚟嘅，形容係 splendid and expensive looking。咁啊文中咧就用 sumptuous 當 Quixote 講嘅，佢形容 Dulcinea 會係喺一個好 sumptuous 嘅地方，處於一個好 sumptuous 嘅位置，好舒適嘅。Austerity A-U-S-T-E-R-I-T-Y 名詞嚟嘅 sternness or severity of manner or attitude。Difficult economic conditions created by government measures to reduce public expenditure。呢度係有2個意思嘅，唔同嘅意思嚟啊。第一個解釋就係好簡樸嘅生活，生活上嘅艱苦啦嘅簡樸啦。第二個咧就係一個公開啲嘅層面啊，一個政府或者國家嘅層面將開支緊縮。 去收縮佢。兩個意思雖然係唔同，但係某程度上又有所聯繫啦。Austerity 係一個比較負面啲嘅詞，一個簡單啲嘅字咧 testily T-E-S-T-I-L-Y 一個副詞嚟嘅 adverb 嚟嘅，意思係 angrily or in an irritated way 暴躁易怒嘅。呢個字就係用嚟形容嗰個農家女啦，面對住 Don Quixote 佢哋不着邊際嘅評論嘅對話，佢哋好嬲怒啊，即係好想快啲離開，對佢哋惡言相向。好，我呢一節嚟到呢一度，下一次再同大家讀你聽，拜拜。大家好，讀你聽2.0，今日繼續讀 Miguel de Cervantes 嘅 Don Quixote， 讀到 Part 2嘅第11節。呢一節嘅名叫做 Of the strange adventure which the valiant Don Quixote had with the car or cart of the Cortes of Death。咁上一回咧就講到 Don Quixote 咧遇到佢嘅夢中情人啦，又或者係 Sancho 佢擺出嚟嘅一個假象啦。咁Don Quixote起碼佢心目中咧，去到最後係真係以為呢幾個農家女子咧，就其中之一個咧就係 Dulcinea 啦。咁然之後佢亦都慨嘆巫術黑魔法咧，就令到佢咧唔可以享受佢眼前嘅美人，就要俾呢個黑魔法所蒙蔽。咁 Sancho 咧講完呢個大話咧，自己都暗暗喺度偷笑，你覺得啊咁都過到骨喎，係咪？見完女子之後，Don Quixote 又何去何從呢？我哋再睇落去啦。
Dejected beyond measure, did Don Quixote pursue his journey, turning over in his mind the cruel trick the enchanters had played him in changing his lady Dulcinea into the vile shape of the village lass. Nor could he think of any way of restoring her to her original form. And these reflections so absorbed him that without being aware of it, he let go of Rocinante's bridle, and he, perceiving the liberty that was granted him, stopped at every step to crop the fresh grass with which the plain abounded. Sancho recalled him from his reverie. Melancholy, senor, said he, was made not for beasts, but for men. But if men give way to it overmuch, they turn to beasts. Control yourself, your worship, be yourself again. Gather up Rocinante's reins, cheer up, rouse yourself, and show that gallant spirit that knights errant ought to have. What the devil is this? What weakness is this? Are we here or in France? The devil fly away with all the Dulcineas in the world, for the well-being of a single knight-errant is of more consequence than all the enchantments and transformations on earth. Hush, Sancho, said Don Quixote in a weak and faint voice. Hush and utter no blasphemies against that enchanted lady, for I alone am to blame for her misfortune and hard fate. Her calamity has come of the hatred the wicked bear me. So say I, returned Sancho. His heart rent in twain, I trow, who saw her once to see her now. Thou mayest well say that, Sancho, replied Don Quixote, as thou sawest her in the full perfection of her beauty. For the enchantment does not go so far as to pervert thy vision or hide her loveliness from thee. Against me alone and against my eyes is the strength of its venom directed. Nevertheless, there is one thing which has occurred to me, and that is that thou didst ill describe her beauty to me. For, as well as I recollect, thou saidst that her eyes were pearls, but eyes that are like pearls are rather the eyes of a sea bream than of a lady, and I am persuaded that Dulcinea's must be green emeralds, full and soft, with 2 rainbows for eyebrows. Take away those pearls for her eyes, and transfer them to her teeth. For beyond a doubt, Sancho, thou hast taken the one for the other, the eyes for the teeth. Very likely, said Sancho, for her beauty bewildered me as much as her ugliness did your worship. But let us leave it all to God, who alone knows what is to happen in this vale of tears, in this evil world of ours, where there is hardly a thing to be found without some mixture of wickedness, roguery, and rascality. But one thing, senor, troubles me more than all the rest, and that is thinking what is to be done when your worship conquers some giant, or some other knight, and orders him to go and present himself before the beauty of the lady Dulcinea. Where is this poor giant, or this poor wretch of a vanquished knight, to find her? I think I can see them wandering all over El Toboso, looking like noddies, and asking for my lady Dulcinea, and even if they meet her in the middle of the street, they wouldn't know her any more than they would my father. Perhaps, Sancho, returned Don Quixote, the enchantment does not go so far as to deprive conquered and presented giants and knights of the power of recognizing Dulcinea. We will try by experiment with one or two of the first I vanquish and send to her, whether they see her or not, by commanding them to return and give me an account of what happened to them in this respect. I declare I think what your worship has proposed is excellent, said Sancho, and that by this plan we shall find out what we want to know. And if it be that it is only from your worship she is hidden, the misfortune will be more yours than hers. But so long as the Lady Dulcinea is well and happy, we on our part will make the best of it, and get on as well as we can, seeking our adventures and leaving time to take his own course, for he is the best physician for these and greater ailments. Don Quixote was about to reply to Sancho Panza, but he was prevented by a cart crossing the road full of the most diverse and strange personages and figures that could be imagined. He who led the mules and acted as carter was a hideous demon. The cart was open to the sky, without a tilt or cane roof, and the first figure that presented itself to Don Quixote's eyes was that of Death itself with a human face, and next to it was an angel with large painted wings, and at one side an emperor with a crown, to all appearance of gold, on his head. At the feet of Death was the god called Cupid, without his bandage, but with his bow, quiver, and arrows. There was also a knight in full armor, except that he had no morion or helmet, but only a hat decked with plumes of divers colors, and along with these there were others with a variety of costumes and faces. All this, unexpectedly encountered, took Don Quixote somewhat aback, and struck terror into the heart of Sancho. But the next instant Don Quixote was glad of it, believing that some new perilous adventure was presenting itself to him, and under this impression, and with a spirit prepared to face any danger, he planted himself in front of the cart, and in a loud and menacing tone exclaimed, "Carter, or coachman, or devil, or whatever thou art, tell me at once who thou art, whither thou art going, and who these folk are thou carriest in thy wagon, which looks more like Charon's boat than an ordinary cart." To which the devil, stopping the cart, answered quietly, "Signor, we are players of Angulo and Malo's company. We have been acting the play of the Cortes of Death this morning, which is the octave of Corpus Christi, in the village behind that hill, and we have to act it this afternoon in that village which you can see from this. And as it is so near, and to save the trouble of undressing and dressing again, we go in the costumes in which we perform. And that lad there appears as Death, that other as an angel, and that woman, the manager's wife, plays the queen, this one the soldier, that the emperor, and I the devil. And I am one of the principal characters of the play, for in this company I take the leading parts. If you want to know anything more about us, ask me, and I will answer with the utmost exactitude, for as I am a devil, I am up to everything." "By the faith of a knight-errant," replied Don Quixote, "when I saw this cart, I fancied some great adventure was presenting itself to me. But I declare one must touch with the hand that appears to the eye, if illusions are to be avoided. God speed you, good people, keep your festival, and remember, if you demand me aught wherein I can render you a service, I will do it gladly and willingly. For from a child I was fond of a play, and in my youth a keen lover of the actor's art." While they were talking, fate so willed it that one of the company, in a mummer's dress with a great number of bells, and armed with 3 blown ox bladders at the end of a stick, joined them, and this merry Andrew, approaching Don Quixote, began flourishing his stick and banging the ground with the bladders and cutting capers with great jingling of the bells, which untoward apparition so startled Rocinante that, in spite of Don Quixote's efforts to hold him in, taking the bit between his teeth, he set off across the plain with greater speed than the bones of his anatomy ever gave any promise of. Sancho, who thought his master was in danger of being thrown, jumped off Dapple and ran in all haste to help him. But by the time he reached him, he was already on the ground, and beside him was Rocinante, who had come down with his master, the usual end and upshot of Rocinante's vivacity and high spirits. But the moment Sancho quitted his beast to go and help Don Quixote, the dancing devil with the bladders jumped on the devil, and beating him with them, more by the fright and the noise than by the pain of the blows, made him fly across the field towards the village where they were going to hold the festival. Sancho witnessed Dapple's career and his master fall, and did not know which of the two cases of need he should tend to first. But in the end, like a good squire and good servant, he let his love for his master prevail over his affection for his ass, though every time he saw the bladders rise in the air and come down on the hind quarters of his Dapple, he felt the pains and terrors of death, and he would have rather had the blows fall on the apples of his own eyes than on the least hair of his ass's tail. In this trouble and perplexity he came to where Don Quixote lay in a far sorrier plight than he liked, and having helped him to mount Rocinante, he said to him, "Signor, the devil has carried off my Dapple." "What devil?" asked Don Quixote. "The one with the bladders," said Sancho. "Then I will recover him," said Don Quixote, "even if he be shut up with him in the deepest and darkest dungeons of hell. Follow me, Sancho, for the cart goes slowly, and with the news of it I will make good the loss of Dapple." "You need not take the trouble, Signor," said Sancho. "Keep cool, for as I now see, the devil has let Dapple go, and he is coming back to his old quarters." And so it turned out, for, having come down with Dapple, in imitation of Don Quixote and Rocinante, the devil made off on foot to the town, and the ass came back to his master. "For all that," said Don Quixote, "it will be well to visit the discourtesy of that devil upon some of those in the cart, even if it were the emperor himself." "Don't think of it, your worship," returned Sancho. "Take my advice and never meddle with actors, for they are a favored class. I myself have known an actor taken up for 2 murders, and yet come off scot-free. Remember that, as they are merry folk who give pleasure, everyone favors and protects them, and helps and makes much of them, above all when they are those of the royal companies and under patent, most of whom in dress and appearance look like princes." "Still, for all that," said Don Quixote, "the player devil must not go off boasting, even if the whole human race favors him." So saying, he made for the cart, which was now very near the town, shouting out as he went, "Stay, halt, ye merry, jovial crew! I want to teach you how to treat asses and animals that serve the squires of knight-errant for steeds." So loud were the shouts of Don Quixote that those in the cart heard and understood them, and guessing by the words what the speaker's intention was, Death in an instant jumped out of the cart, and the emperor, the devil carter, and the angel after him, nor did the queen or the god Cupid stay behind, and all armed themselves with stones and formed in line, prepared to receive Don Quixote on the points of their pebbles. Don Quixote, when he saw them drawn up in such a gallant array with uplifted arms, ready for a mighty discharge of stones, checked Rocinante and began to consider in what way he could attack them with the least danger to himself. As the halted Sancho came up, and seeing him disposed to attack this well-ordered squadron, said to him, "It would be the height of madness to attempt such an enterprise. Remember, Signor, that against swords from the brook, and plenty of them, there is no defensive armor in the world, except to stow oneself away under a brass bell. And besides, one should remember that it is rashness, and not valor, for a single man to attack an army that has death in it, and where emperors fight in person, with angels, good and bad, to help him. And if this reflection will not make you keep quiet, perhaps it will to know for certain that among all these, though they look like kings, princes, and emperors, there is not a single knight-errant." "Now indeed thou hast hit the point, Sancho," said Don Quixote, "which may and should turn me from the resolution I had already formed. I cannot and must not draw sword, as I have many a time before told thee, against anyone who is not a dubbed knight. It is for thee, Sancho, if thou wilt, to take vengeance for the wrong done to thy Dapple, and I will help thee from here by shouts and salutary counsels." "There is no occasion to take vengeance on anyone, Signor," replied Sancho, "for it is not the part of good Christians to revenge wrongs, and besides, I will arrange it with my ass to leave his grievance to my goodwill and pleasure, and that is to live in peace as long as heaven grants me life." "Well," said Don Quixote, "if that be thy determination, good Sancho, sensible Sancho, Christian Sancho, honest Sancho, let us leave these phantoms alone and turn to the pursuit of better and worthier adventures, for, from what I see of this country, we cannot fail to find plenty of marvelous ones in it." He at once wheeled about. Sancho ran to take possession of his Dapple, Death and his flying squadron returned to their cart and pursued their journey, and thus the dread adventure of the cart of death ended happily, thanks to the advice Sancho gave his master, who had, the following day, a fresh adventure of no less thrilling interest than the last, with an enamored knight-errant.
好，呢一節讀到嚟呢一度比較間長啲嘅篇章啦，就係遇到一班演員，路上遇到一班演員。咁呢班演員呢，就係去附近有個演出嘅，都邀請當幾我哋去觀賞。喺交談嘅過程呢，其中之個演員呢，就走到去當幾我哋嘅近前。咁由於佢身上邊呢，有啲鐘，呢啲鐘呢，就發出啲聲音呢，驚動到 Rocinante。當幾我哋嘅座駕呢，因為咁呢，就疾跑。咁當幾我哋就搭咗落嚟。跟住 Sancho 咧，作為一個好嘅僕人啦，咁當然要去睇下佢主人嘅情況，但亦都係因為咁咧，佢就劈低咗佢嘅女仔嘅 Dapple。呢個 Dapple 咧就被呢個演員團隊飾演魔鬼嘅咧就騎走咗。Sancho 咧就急起上嚟啦，咁同當幾我哋講，當幾我哋就好，我哋一定要揾翻佢哋出嚟，我算清楚啲筆賬。好幸運地咧 ，Dapple 咧又再次出現咯。咁但係當幾我哋咧都唔會善罷甘休嘅。就向住呢一班演員大叫，警示佢哋。咁而呢個時候咧，所有嘅演員們咧都已經手持住石頭咧，就準備加以還擊噶啦。呢個時候咧 ，Sancho 咧立時咧就勸咗當幾我哋。我記得喺 Part 1咧，如果出現呢啲咁嘅情況咧，當幾我哋都係唔會聽 Sancho 講嘅。然之後最後咧就兩個一齊俾人打到跪地不起嘅。但係今次咧，當幾我哋咧似乎就有聽喎。而點解佢會聽從 Sancho 咧？有一個點咧好緊要嘅就係 Sancho 講咗，佢話對方冇一個人係騎士，唔係遊俠，佢哋只係普通演員啫。當幾我哋於是咧就不屑出手，佢反而咧就叫 Sancho 自己出手，然之後佢喺後邊吶喊咗係。咁 Sancho 當然立即拒絕啦，有咩需要啫？咁這女仔都喺度咯。咁呢節就係咁樣過掉。分享一個字啦 ，rend。常用嘅 rend，R-E-N-D rend 動詞嚟嘅 ，tear something into pieces。咁文中就係 rend in twain 就係咧將一樣嘢咧就撕開兩半。好，今次讀嚟呢度，下一次再講一讀你聽，拜拜。